What's happening in Mississippi from MPB Think Radio? This is the Sit Down with Russ Latino, where we explore the ideas and people that are shaping Mississippi's future. You know, every week on this program, we get to talk to leading politicians and thought leaders and community leaders from across the state. And we talk about heavy issues. We talk about policies. We talk about ways to improve Mississippi. We talk about controversies. And one of the things in the conversation, whether it's here or outside on the street or what you see in the public square nationally when it comes to politics, is that there's a whole lot that divides us. There's red, there's blue, there's conservative, there's liberal, there's black, there's white, there's poor, there's rich. And particularly in the environment that we're in, there's a lot of vitriol. There's a lot of division. There are a lot of things that put us at each other's throats. And I would argue unnecessarily. But every once in a while, something happens that reminds us of our humanity, that reminds us that there's more than those petty divisions that keep us at each other's throats, that really transcends all of that noise and puts us back in a place to recognizing that the human life is a fragile life, that there are adversities that we must overcome, and that we overcome them better together. Mississippi is facing one of those adversities now. Over the weekend, on Friday and Saturday, the state was ravaged by what the National Weather Service now says was 17 tornadoes that hit the state, part of a large weather system that devastated states across the Midwest and Southeast over the weekend. 42 deaths reported total from that storm, 7 in Mississippi. One of those tornadoes, and really two tornadoes, went through Walthall County. The biggest one that the National Weather Service currently has identified, which was an EF4 that started in Louisiana, worked its way through Pike, Walthall, Marion, Jefferson, Davis, and Covington counties, and wreaked a lot of devastation and damage across those areas. So we thought we'd take a little break from some of the politics. Maybe later in the show we'll talk about what's going on in the legislative session and talk to somebody that's on the ground. We're joined today by Timothy Jones. Timothy is the Assistant District Attorney in Walthall County. He's also one of the people that's coordinating the relief and recovery effort in Walthall County. On top of that, and I wish this was under better circumstances, Timothy and I have actually known each other for a very long time. So a long time ago now, Timothy and I were in law school around the same period and also attended the same church up in Oxford. We're in Sunday school class together. Salt of the earth guy. So I'm glad to see he's involved in this because I know it probably means that it's going to get done well. Welcome to the Sit Down, Timothy.
Good morning, Russ. It's good to see you this morning.
It's good to see you as well. I wish it was under better circumstances. As I mentioned, give me a sense. I mean, obviously you live in Tylertown. I know that's home, been family home for a long time for you guys. What was the experience like on Saturday for you?
Well, it was absolutely my first personal experience with a tornado. And just as everyone describes it, myself and my family were retreated to a closet and experienced it, but we had very nominal damage at our house, lost utilities and things like that. But our county suffered some pretty severe devastation in the tracks of these two storms.
Leading up to the storm, I guess for days people had been saying this is going to be a really bad storm. Did you get a sense that people were aware of the potential scope of devastation? Was there preparation underway? What was the vibe, for lack of a better word, like leading up to the storms on Saturday?
So, you know, we clearly were not expecting this kind of devastation locally. You know, we hear of the meteorologists make these predictions, and so oftentimes we don't take them serious enough. We did have preparations in place, but the difference in a hurricane and tornadoes is you don't know exactly where they're going to hit. You know, the front's coming through. You're not sure exactly where they're going to hit. We definitely did not expect one. We definitely did not expect two. Obviously, many people in the state escaped those. Many didn't. But we were prepared, but didn't, you know, not hoping ill will on anyone else, but not necessarily fully considering that they were going to hit us so hard, so heavily at home.
So you said you got in a closet as the storm was hitting. I mean, what was the experience? I mean, was it just loud wind? Did you guys have property damage at your house?
So all the timber around my house is flattened. I don't know what to credit for it except the good Lord blessing us. The houses on either side of me were totally destroyed. And the lives were lost after the storm passed us. The barn on our property totally destroyed, but for whatever reason, the Lord was with us at our house. We lost shingles and things that can very easily be replaced, but we didn't have any structural integrity. Just lost property outside that got sucked up by. But definitely the freight train sound that everybody talks about is a real thing.
So your neighbors on both sides of you, their homes were destroyed.
That is correct.
What is their circumstance right now?
I live about 5 miles outside of Tylertown. The storm would have already come through Paradise Ranch, which, anytime Tylertown, Mississippi is on the front page, top of the fold of the New York Times, things are bad. And so Paradise Ranch that was photographed there in the New York Times was where it first entered Walthall County. And I'm probably about 8 or 10 miles from there. It continued traveling north through our Salem community, which is one of our public schools in the county, and furthering up to Darburn, where our fatalities were, and then it owned into Marion County.
Okay. Have you been able to talk to your neighbors since their homes were destroyed?
We have. We've talked to a number of them. We've been busy coordinating at the Emergency Management Instant Command Post, but we have touched base with our neighbors and made sure that they were secure for the time being. There's a long road ahead for all of us in Walthall County.
And give me a sense, when you're having conversations with your neighbors, are they staying at other family members' houses? Are they in hotels? Those that have been displaced, what's the array of options that they're going with to try and have shelter?
We have learned all of this really fast. We don't have a shelter, a FEMA shelter in Walthall County, although our neighbors do, and we have been offered resources. But just like you began the program today, Russ, from the ground one, when the rescue and recovery began, it was neighbors helping neighbors, neighbors helping neighbors, and I cannot describe the amount of generosity that we've experienced since this began. Families and neighbors have taken in most of our folks and are making those accommodations, and we have some accommodations coming for some temporary housing, trailers and things like that are being brought in by some charitable organizations. And hopefully, ultimately, FEMA, when they get through with their assessments.
Do you have a sense of how many people are without housing or how many people lost their houses at this point?
So we have 182 residences. 54 of those were totally destroyed. Another 54 of those had major damage. And then we have another 50 that have damage that was classified by MEMA as less than major damage.
And that's just in Walthall County?
And those are just residences, not structures. Those are purely families and homes.
And then what is the impact on businesses? Do you have a sense of that?
So I think we have, in a relatively poor market for timber right now, we have a lot of timber farmers that have lost substantially with timber that's down in the destruction path that came through. Of course, Paradise Ranch, some of the resorts on the Bogachita River in Walthall County that provide a small community a pretty significant economic base are totally destroyed today. So there's going to be some significant economic impact from that.
And for listeners who may not be familiar with that area, obviously it's southwest Mississippi, close to the Louisiana border. Timber's a pretty major industry in your area, right?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Okay. And so what
poultry farms as well. We've had numerous poultry farms that were destroyed by the winds and tornado.
One of the things, Timothy, I lived through Katrina, as I guess a lot of people in Mississippi did, but my family was all on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. My mom's house got slabbed. My sister had a van in the middle of her living room that got swept in through the Back Bay of Biloxi. That was obviously widespread devastation. One of the things that came out of that, though, were stories, kind of what you said, neighbors helping neighbors, people overcoming adversity. We're in the early days, but have you seen signs of just incredible generosity, sort of that humanity that I alluded to at the beginning of the show?
Absolutely. Southern Baptist Disaster Relief was the first group that was on feet on the ground helping us. They were stationed at our Instant Command. The local Instant Command became the gymnasium at Tylertown Baptist Church, and they were right there hand in hand with us at the beginning. Our neighboring emergency management coordinators from the neighboring counties. We couldn't have done it without them. This is more than a local organization can handle. Mr. Chris Reed in Lincoln County, J.D. Powell in Emmett County, and Mr. Herschel Harp with MEMA were very integral in setting up our incident command. And the amount of charitable organizations that are contacting us is amazing. And the neighbors helping neighbors. That's who cleared the roads for emergency vehicles during rescue and recovery. We had local loggers with skidders, farmers with tractors that were working to get the roads open for those immediate needs before any other resources could even arrive.
So I know you're a part of sort of the official coordinated team to try and do recovery in Walthall County. Give me a sense of what you guys are doing in terms of staging, what next steps are for you.
So we were probably a little behind in a lot of ways, but you never know what to expect. But we've got we have a coordinator that's handling volunteer labor and civilian labor that's interested in helping, and the generosity there's outpouring. We have a coordinator that's handling the logistics of donations and the distribution of those in bulk to our local churches and organizations that are getting them out to the disaster area. And the Walthall County Chamber of Commerce is establishing helping a home for these victims. So organizations that are interested in financial contributions are connecting with a particular family. We're doing that through helping of homes through the Walthall County Chamber of Commerce. The Tylerton Baptist Church has facilitated all of us being able to set these organizations up to these different points of contact. Of course, the MEMA assessments are complete. FEMA verification of those is taking place today. So we hope some more federal and state resources will be available in short order.
I know one of the things that always happens in these situations is obviously there is not only damage to property, in this case, a horrible loss of life, and I want to talk about that in the next segment with you, but also the destruction of power lines and utilities. At this point, has most of the power in your area been restored?
I think the vast majority, I think, yes, more than 50% of it has been restored. We got it back at our house yesterday, and I heard of some with more intense damaged areas, there was some power. Now there's a lot lagging. There are folks that don't have the ability with meter receptacles and things like that for it to be connected yet. But the linemen were out there today. We had a dozen Mississippi State troopers that were there to help coordinate with the linemen to get the highway shut down that they need to shut down to get that restored. And water associations, uprooted trees killed the water. And we've had neighboring water associations and power associations assisting our locals.
We're talking today with Walthall County Assistant District Attorney Timothy Jones about the devastation in Walthall County after the tornadoes over the weekend. It's time for a break, but you're listening to The Sit Down on MPB Think Radio, and we will be back in just a moment.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bobby Rush. As a blues man, I love Mississippi Public Broadcasting. If you support Mississippi music and their local programming, donate now, right now, and become a member today, not tomorrow. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Doesn't matter how big or small, but we prefer big. Thank you very much.
You don't want to miss the next Mississippi Antique Showcase coming to Oxford, Mississippi, May 2nd and 3rd.
For a $100 donation, you can get a showcase ticket, complimentary food, cocktails, and an on-site appraisal, or a chance to be on the show. Or for $60, you can just come and be part of the party. Call 1-844-874-6874, visit mpbonline.org, or scan the QR code on your screen.
We can't wait to see you in Oxford for the next Mississippi Antique Showcase.
The Mississippi legislative session is in the home stretch, and MPB's At Issue keeps you informed of the major developments.
What do Mississippians expect of their government?
It is a fascinating debate, and he and I could go back and forth for an hour on this.
But the truth is, we cannot just keep creating no accountability.
Join MPB's At Issue for interviews, analysis, and debate every Friday night at 6:30 on MPB Think Radio. Go to mpbonline.org/issue for podcasts and extended interviews. MPB, your stories, our mission.
You're listening to The Sit Down with Russ Latino right here on MPB Think Radio every Wednesday at 10 a.m., heard statewide. If you don't catch an episode live, you can always catch us on YouTube. We live stream the show, despite the fact that I regularly say that I have a face that was made for radio. They've put me on YouTube anyway. You can also download it at a vast array of places, including, I think, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast. So we certainly appreciate listeners. If you like what you hear every week, be sure to share it with some folks. The audience is certainly growing, and we appreciate everybody that tunes in every week. You know, we've had a great array of guests, from the governor to the lieutenant governor, the speaker, and on down the line. You know, we've heard from statewides and legislators and lots of folks on really important issues. If you're used to the program, that's what you're used to hearing. Today, we thought we'd take a little bit of a detour in recognition of the fact that for a lot of people across the state of Mississippi, there's a lot of hurt going on right now. There were weather events on Friday and Saturday night that wreaked havoc across the state, 17 confirmed tornadoes, lots of damage to property, loss of life. We're talking with Walthall County District Attorney, or Assistant District Attorney, Timothy Jones. Timothy and I have known each other for a while, but he also is intricately involved in the effort to do recovery in Walthall County and Tylertown. Timothy, before the break, we were mentioning the obvious outages of power and some of the infrastructure that gets taken down with a storm like this. And you said that close to 50% or over 50% of power has been restored in your area. Is that right?
I believe that's probably an accurate assessment.
Okay. And, you know, it's always amazing to me, because one of the things you were saying, too, was that you saw people from surrounding communities, utilities from surrounding communities come in and try and restore water because trees had uprooted your water. Or, you have linemen from other power companies, other states come in to try and restore electricity. That's always amazed me, how the utility companies coordinate with each other like that. I know during Hurricane Helene, Mississippi Power and I think Energy sent crews to Florida and North Carolina, and that really is some of the finer points of sort of the American spirit and the Mississippi spirit, is when we set aside our differences and help each other like that. Are there other instances like that you're seeing? I know you mentioned recovery efforts from some of the private groups on the ground. Can you share any of those experiences?
Absolutely. Well, the neighboring law enforcement agencies, I guess every county adjoining us, we probably had the sheriff and chiefs of polices of Columbia, Pike County Sheriff, Lincoln County Sheriff. I hate to start listing them, because everybody in the area came to us in Walthall County and helped us. And that's probably most of that non-compensated, most of that just coming to lend a hand. We had all dispatchers from other counties that showed up at our dispatch that really coordinated things, not to mention just the neighbor-to-neighbor assistance, the number of churches and religious organizations that have reached out, Cajun Navy, the like. There are as many meals being prepared in Walthall County as there are people today, I assure you.
Obviously we're focusing on Walthall County this morning because our guest is from that area and because in a lot of ways it was the epicenter of the event across the state in terms of damage. Certainly if you look at MEMA's numbers, the highest number of structures that were damaged, there was loss of life in Walthall County. But really across Mississippi, there are communities that are dealing with this. And it's, Timothy, you referenced something earlier that I think is true with Hurricane Katrina because of the scale of that event, because of the timing of that event. Everybody felt some of the impact. Even as it worked its way north, it took out power in Jackson and whatnot. There were places in Mississippi on Saturday that got a light rain for 5 minutes. And that's all that was their experience other than hearing on the news what was going on in surrounding communities. And so if where I live, as an example, you didn't bother turning on your television or, getting online and looking at a news source, you wouldn't have known that you were dealing with what you've dealt with in Walthall County. But there are 715 homes across the state of Mississippi that were damaged in this event. I think my understanding was that there were injuries reported in 21 different counties, damages to structures in 29 different counties. And so even if you were in one of the areas that was not affected, lots of people around the state were really impacted by this. Jermaine, I know you've spent some time looking at some ways that people who want to help can get involved. You want to go through any of that?
That's right. Yeah, we've got some ways if you need help and also if you would like to get involved. So federal assistance with FEMA, of course, they have provided financial aid for housing, personal property, and all other needs. You can apply online directly at disasterAssistance.gov, and they also have a mobile app to make that a little bit easier. But they have a critical needs assistant where they provide a one-time $500 payment per household for immediate or critical needs. They also have individual and household programs where they provide financial assistance to help with disaster-related expenses. And also for federal assistance, the Small Business Administration offers low-interest disaster loans to individuals and households to help with those disaster losses. And then, of course, on our state and local resource level, we have, of course, MEMA, Mississippi Emergency Management Agency, with information and resources for disaster response. We have our Mississippi Department of Employment Security. They offer disaster unemployment assistance. And then the Mississippi Department of Human Services provides, of course, SNAP assistance and 211. Mississippi. You can contact them by dialing 211. They provide an online resource directory for essential needs. And then there's a list of more nonprofit organizations. Of course, we all know those: American Red Cross, Salvation Army, and Samaritan's Purse. But what I'll do is in our show description, I'll list these out.
Yeah, please do. And I mean, I think if you're listening and you weren't impacted by this, now is an excellent opportunity to do that neighbor helping neighbor thing, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And I think the overwhelming sentiment when these things happen is that people do want to help. Sometimes it's hard to know how best to help. So, Timothy, I'm wondering, in Walthall County, if there are people who want to be helpful to you, are there places that you would direct them right now, or there are resources that people really need? What's the ask, if you will?
If someone's interested in helping right now in Walthall County, the Walthall County set up with Helping a Home with Miss Tisa Payne as the coordinator. Her number is 601-551-8338, or her email is Tisa, T-E-S-A, at PikeetOil.com. That is probably the best funnel for local Walthall County needs right now. She's going to try to pair people up with families or help them with direct financial contributions to specific families that were impacted by this in the Walthall County area.
You know, we've talked a lot about property damage today, and it's horrible. It's horrible to think that you lose a life worth of stuff. Obviously, for people, a home is more than just a place for shelter. There is sentimental attachment. There is safety in that. But the greatest loss that occurred is obviously the loss of life that occurred. In Walthall County, how many did you have that perished?
We had 4. Mr. Carter Young's a 7-year-old. Miss Gabrielle Pierre is 34-year-old. Mr. Jeffrey Irvin is 42. And after the event, Mr. Wilfred Robinson Sr., who is 90, succumbed to some injuries that were sustained in the damage.
Have you been able to talk to any of their families?
Not directly, but we've gotten some assistance to a couple of them through some resources.
And I imagine at this point they're making arrangements.
That they would. As far as I know, I've not heard of any arrangements completed yet.
And is there anybody missing, or is everybody accounted for at this point?
Everyone is. We had a rescue. The first phase of rescue was accomplished, and we did not have any missing persons for reports. We were able to satisfy those within a number of hours after the storm came through.
Well, Timothy, I am sorry for what you guys are going through down in Walthall County. I appreciate you being willing to spend a couple segments with me today to kind of explain to people who may not really understand the scope and gravity of the devastation there, to explain your experience and also some ways that people can get involved. Mississippi's praying for you guys, and hopefully we see each other again in better terms, closer together than 20 years.
Absolutely. That sounds great, Russ. We appreciate your time and your attention and your prayers.
Thank you. You're listening to Sit Down on MPB Think Radio. We will be back in just a moment.
The Measuring Show.
Since 1970, MPB has been enriching the lives of Mississippians.
Everything we do gives us the chance to grow and learn.
With your support, we are always there whenever and wherever you need us. Together through the years, together in the future. Please consider making a donation at mpbfoundation.org. MPB, your stories, our mission.
Hello, I'm Desiree Frazier, host of the award-winning news program, Mississippi Edition. We bring you conversations about the latest news from across the Magnolia State. Whether it's politics, healthcare, or education, you'll hear in-depth discussions on issues that matter to you. So join us each weekday morning at 8:30 on MPB Think Radio, or download the podcast, listen through the app, and online.
Both seasons of the 10-Minute Timeout are now available on a variety of podcasting apps. The mini podcast can be binged in a day and is perfect for those that just want a quick listen. Join me, Lacey Alexander, as I sit down with special guests, revisit major moments, and give a platform to the athletes and sports that shape Mississippi. Head over to mpbonline.org to give it a try.
Listening to the Sit Down with Russ Latino right here on MPB Think Radio. Thank you for being with us today. It was good to catch up with Timothy Jones. I've known Timothy for a very long time. I wish the circumstances were better. Obviously, folks in Walthall County, Tylertown are going through an awful lot right now. Certainly people outside of Walthall County. I know Grenada County, I think the community of Elliott was hit with a tornado. I know that in Taylorsville and Smith County, there was a reported tornado. Damage from tornadoes, 17 reported tornadoes across the state of Mississippi on Friday and Saturday night. 29 counties reported injuries. 21 counties with property damage, some 715 residences across the state that were impacted, and obviously the loss of life, 7 lives in Mississippi. James Lott, 67, of Seminary; Ryan Tolbert, 36, of Society Hill; Mary Suzette Tolbert, 56, of Society Hill; Jeffrey Irvin, 42, of Darbin; Carter Young, 7 years old, of Darbin; Gabrielle Pierre, 34, of Darbin; and then Wilfred Robinson, who was 90, in the St. John community. And so you had young to old that paid the ultimate price or lost their lives with the havoc that was wreaked in these storms. And prayers go out to them, to their families, to everybody that's affected by this. I mean, certainly the loss of life is something that can't be replaced. Property can be replaced, but property loss is still tough. I alluded to this in the segment with Timothy, but my family was dramatically impacted by Hurricane Katrina, and we're at the 20-year mark, which is hard to believe, Jermaine, that we're 20 years
That's right.
In from that storm. But I vividly remember I was in law school. Back then, cell phone service was horrible.
Even before the
storm.
Yeah.
And which was funny to say, but 2005 is 20 years ago.
Right, I know.
But I vividly remember my mom was one of these stubborn people who had lived through Camille and rode out Camille, and trying to get a hold of her because nobody knew whether or not she'd left or stayed. And she was in a community within Bay St. Louis that had just been wiped out.
Yeah.
And not being able to get through on the cell phone and the trepidation of that. And candidly, even once we were able to figure out that she had left just before the storm, then you go back and you realize, hey, every memory you've ever had is gone.
Yeah.
Like every picture from your childhood, all of those experiences are wiped away, and in its place you've just got a slab, and you've got to figure out what to do with that.
Yeah.
And so I know that this is a different kind of event than something on the scale of a hurricane, but for the people who lost their homes, it's not different at all.
About the same. Right there.
Right?
Yeah, it's right there.
Because they've got to now pick up those pieces and figure out what's next for them. Do we rebuild? Do we go somewhere else? All of those questions are at the top of mind as you deal with this. And you're dealing with a lot of damage at once. So, I know insurance companies get a bad rap, sometimes deserved, sometimes not. I mean, they're suddenly having to adjust way more property damage than they're accustomed to adjusting in Little Tylertown, Mississippi. And so that stuff takes time and is full of frustration. Our prayers go out. And then obviously,
definitely,
I think there are, in the same token or in the same vein, you experience all that devastation and simultaneously you recognize just how good other humans can be.
That's right. That's right.
When people that you don't know show up at your house with chainsaws to move trees.
That's what you were saying in the beginning, how it just breaks down all those barriers and we come together on that one accord.
Yeah, it's amazing how adversity will do that, right? You'll forget about, are you MAGA or not MAGA, or whatever the dividing
division
line is.
Yeah.
And you just start to help each other. And candidly, I mean, I think that's when Mississippi is at its best. I mean, not to harp too much on Katrina, but I mean, that certainly was the experience in Katrina, with Haley Barbour talking about hitching up britches. Well, I mean, everybody from the upper echelons of political power down to the local guy who lived next door hitched up their britches and did right by each other.
That's right.
And so it's really remarkable. I know you've got maybe some photographs, and of course, if you're listening on the radio, you won't necessarily be able to see these, but hopefully between Jermaine and I, we can describe some of it.
Yeah, our very own news team between Michael McEwen, Will Stribling, and Shamira Muhammad, they had covered this storm pretty heavily. And we've got a audio clip from Will, and we do have some photos as well to accompany that, where we have officials providing update on rescue and recovery efforts following those weekend storms.
23 counties across Mississippi are reporting damage from the severe weather that began Friday night and pummeled the state through Saturday. During a Sunday press conference, Stephen McGraney, director of the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency, or MEMA, said a deadly tornado that struck Walthall County tracked for 70 miles. Here he is describing how the area looked the next day.
Major telephone poles gone, everything else, and you're talking 25 to 35 feet up. Pine trees were snapped. We're not talking about twisted. We're not talking about rolled over. Snapped, almost like a big giant brought in the hedgers and just cut it off and laid them down.
MEMA is coordinating the multi-agency response to the storms. That includes things like the Transportation Department removing debris from roads and the Health Department supporting hospitals treating the dozens of people injured. Governor Tate Reeves said that all who had been reported missing on Saturday had been located as of Sunday afternoon, and that the number of power outages had been reduced from a high of 36,000 to under 8,000. Reeves says he's encouraged by the number of volunteers working with local emergency managers.
Mississippians in times like these step up and do what is necessary to take care of our friends and our neighbors, and that makes me proud to be a Mississippian.
Even though the storms are over, McCraney says they're not done causing damage. Between 8 to 10 inches of rain fell in a short period, causing major flooding in Prentiss and Tishomingo counties. McCraney says that water is slow-moving, but headed elsewhere.
We're going to get floodwaters that are going to move down through the states and are going to impact the rest of the state for probably the next week and a half to 2 weeks.
As of Sunday evening, the storms had claimed the lives of 6 Mississippians, injured 27, and displaced 217, according to MEMA. Will Stribling, MPB News.
Yeah, we've got that. And then, of course, we do have audio as well, but we can get to that a little bit later. But they have assessed that damage caused by flooding in those counties, and there's some update to that as well.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, just looking at the pictures that cycled, and excuse me, looking at the pictures that cycled just now, it's incredible the damage that was wrought. I mean, you see entire forest essentially turned into toothpicks, right?
Laid down.
I know the EF4 in Walthall County, I think they said it was 170 mile an hour winds, which is just an incredible force. I think there was also an EF3 that came through that area with 160 mile an hour winds. And really, when you're talking about anything that strong, 10 miles an hour is not that big a difference in terms of the ferocity of that. I know Haley Forsackerly, who's the president of Energy Mississippi, he posted on Facebook yesterday, I believe, a picture of one of these big steel towers that gets used to transmit electrical lines from like a substation.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about? They look almost like the symbol pi.
Yeah.
You know, the super tall steel towers just twist it, right, like a pretzel.
Yeah.
From the force of the wind. And you see in the pictures that you shared, cars that have been completely flattened by trees, houses that have been completely destroyed. I know in the Paradise Ranch area that Timothy referred to, there was some drone footage that one of the storm chasers shot right after the tornado came through. And it actually reminded me a little bit of what the beach part of South Mississippi looked like after Katrina. Where you just see... you see it wiped clean almost.
It's like a wipeout.
And just incredible damage. And it's hard to fathom the power of something that can do that.
Yeah.
But, coming back to this thought about the way that we always band together, right now, if you're in Walthall County and you were affected, it feels like you're not sure if things are ever going to be right again.
Yeah.
Right?
My heart goes out. I've never had that feeling. So, yes.
And so there's that moment. And look, there are other examples of that in life. If you've lost a loved one that's very close to you, in that moment, there's a numbness and a sense of, are things ever going to feel right again? But humans are resilient creatures. And I believe that God made us that way.
That's right.
And what we see as an example on the Mississippi Gulf Coast 20 years later is that it is possible to rebuild. In some ways, it is possible to rebuild better and stronger than what you were before. And so if you're in one of those affected communities right now and you're having that moment of what is the next step, one, know that there are going to be people there to help you on that next step. And two, also know that, yes, right now you're facing adversity and something that you weren't ready for, but the human experience suggests that there will be recovery. There will be a moment of victory over this trepidation and trial. And so I don't know that provides any immediate comfort, but in the long haul, there's going to be a path to recovery for these communities.
Yeah, that's right. And look, I have to say this before we get into that clip. Pressure makes diamonds, and we are full of diamonds here in the state, of just the people who come through after tragedies like this. And so I really do love being a Mississippian and being on the edge every time we have these weather outbreaks and praying along with other Mississippians and coming together with them after the storm. So yeah. I love that. It's an after the storm type deal. So we're going to get into this right here. We're going to get an update to the assessing the damage caused by flooding in several Mississippi counties. And then, Russ, we can come back after the break.
Sounds good.
All right, here we go.
Powerful thunderstorms brought heavy rain across much of the state this past weekend. In some counties, rivers and creeks swelled into communities. Patrick Holman is the Emergency Management Director for Itawamba County.
We still got some creeks and stuff that are full, but there's no current flooding. Right now, all they have is dealt with is the homes that were flooded from the rising waters on Saturday night.
Holman says several roads were temporarily closed due to floods, and some buildings had water in them.
A daycare, a church, and then we had at least 11 houses. We had a apartment complex with 20 units that was all flooded. Most of them received about 12 inches of water in them. I think one of the houses may have had a couple of feet in it.
Lee Bowdry is the emergency manager for Lee County. He says some rain gauges measured 11 inches of rain within a 4-hour period.
From right now, from what impact that we see is on the east side of the county, we have probably 8 roads that is closed due to flooding and culverts washed out. We're looking at over $500,000 of culvert replacement at this time.
Other counties impacted by flooding include Prentiss, Tishomingo, and Grenada. 6 people were killed across the state, and at least 30 were injured from the storms this weekend. Shamir Mohammed, MPB News.
You don't want to miss the next Mississippi Antique Showcase coming to Oxford, Mississippi, May 2nd and 3rd.
For a $100 donation, you can get a showcase ticket, complimentary food, cocktails, and an on-site appraisal, or a chance to be on the show. Or for $60, you can just come and be part of the party. Call 1-844-874-6874, visit mpbonline.org, or scan the QR code on your screen.
We can't wait to see you in Oxford for the next Mississippi Antique Showcase.
Both seasons of the 10-Minute Timeout are now available on a variety of podcasting apps. The mini podcast can be binged in a day and is perfect for those that just want a quick listen. Join me, Lacey Alexander, as I sit down with special guests, revisit major moments, and give a platform to the athletes and sports that shape Mississippi. Head over to mpbonline.org to give it a try.
The Mississippi legislative session is in the home stretch, and MPB's At Issue keeps you informed of the major developments.
What do Mississippians expect of their government?
It is a fascinating debate, and he and I could go back and forth for an hour on this.
But the truth is, we cannot just keep creating no accountability.
Join MPB's At Issue for interviews, analysis, and debate every Friday night at 6:30 on MPB Think Radio. Go to mpbonline.org/issue for podcasts and extended interviews. MPB, your stories, our mission.
listening to The Sit Down with Russ Latino, heard right here on MPB Think Radio. Appreciate you being with us on this Wednesday as the pollen accumulates and Russ's sinuses explode. I know I am not alone.
No, you're not. The pollen has accumulated, and I've seen it in real time. I've rinsed the car off, came to work, waited on lunch, walked out, and the car was recovered.
It's incredible. The joys of living in Mississippi.
I know.
You got great people, great food, great culture, low cost of living.
Yep.
High pollen count. Very high pollen count. And so if I sound like I'm from Canada today,
you've been eating pollen.
It's because I've been eating pollen and my sinuses are not appreciative.
Right.
You would think after 40 some odd years
you would be used to pollen,
that I would be acclimated. But no, every spring this happens.
Right. Right.
You know, because your sinuses swell and you start to hear yourself
on the inside.
It's like, wait a second.
Right.
That's what I sound like?
Right.
I'm so sorry.
Yes, man. It's that time of year, and it's like you can't get away from it. You might as well just, hang out in it.
Well, Jermaine, thank you for today. This has been a different kind of show than what we normally do.
Yeah.
Obviously, our hearts go out to folks who are dealing with all the storm damage.
Definitely.
But I also know Mississippi will find a way.
That's right.
And so we'll keep working together and get these communities back on track.
And let me give a shout out again to MPB News. Photos courtesy of Michael McEwen, one of our reporters here, and then those 2 audio clips courtesy of Will Stribling and Shamir Muhammad. So
yeah, those were great.
I mean, they were boots on the ground immediately when it all went down. So
very, very good reporting.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I did want to maybe spend a couple of minutes talking about what's going on in session at the end of this show. I know, Jermaine, you mentioned that maybe we had gotten an email from a listener about the tax reform conversations.
Yeah, about the HB1.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was, I had sent it to you. He was wondering about whether the governor was going to, I guess, make a decision on that.
Oh, maybe on a special session or something?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, the special, if he should call that special vote session on HB1 to help with transitioning back into, and I guess help with that. But this is coming from Thomas Kelly or Thomas Williams. He's one of your favorites. I keep forgetting his last name, but that's him.
I got you. So here's what I'd say. I mean, obviously a lot has moved. A lot has moved in the last couple of days on this. And so you initially had HB1, which is the House bill that was going to try to eliminate the income tax by the year 2037. Lots of other moving pieces there. Gas tax increase, a little sales tax increase. Purported to be a net tax cut of $1.1 billion. On the other end of the building in the Senate, you saw a much less aggressive tax reform proposal that would have taken our flat income tax rate from 4% down to 3%.
Okay.
It also had a gas tax component in it, but it did not go towards fully eliminating the income tax. Well, on Monday, both chambers rolled out new plans.
Okay.
Where they kind of moved towards one another a little bit. So the Senate, for the first time since the conversation started, really back in 2021, rolled out an idea that would eventually lead to full income tax elimination based on what are called triggers, right? So if the state takes in a certain amount of money above what the state budget is, then they would start to roll down the rate until it got to zero.
Got it.
The House also came out with a new plan that is a little less aggressive than their first offering, but still more aggressive than the Senate. So the House's original plan was going to go from a 4% rate to a 3% rate in 2027. Now they're looking at going from 4 to 3.5%, and then over the next 11 years, basically cutting it down to zero.
Okay.
So really the biggest difference between the two plans is that the House plan has automatic cuts over a long period of time that lead to elimination, and the Senate plan has conditional cuts based on whether or not the state achieves certain goals.
Okay.
So the House bill would move a lot faster towards income tax elimination. The Senate bill is probably considerably slower, maybe as much as double the time that it would take probably to get full income tax elimination.
So special session, yes, no? You think?
So it really depends. Like I said, both chambers got closer to each other.
Okay.
Right? And so House less aggressive, Senate more aggressive. There's still a gap. But they both voted out their new plans yesterday, which means that these bills are headed to conference. And conference really is just 3 people in both chambers get together at the very end of session
Right.
and decide whether or not they can live with each other.
Okay.
And what it's going to look like to live with each other. It's like bringing together a blended family.
Yeah, it's like
right?
the first family reunion.
Here are going to be the rules.
Yeah.
So I say all of that to say I think there's a chance still, despite a lot of public rancor and tossing of barbs, that the legislature could arrive at a solution without the governor calling a special session.
Okay.
I think that's possible. Now, if the legislature does not arrive at a solution, then I fully expect the governor to call a special session.
All right.
I really do. I think, it's one of those things where he has said it is his top priority.
Yeah.
He has put a lot of energy into it publicly. He at some level in the past has been wary of special sessions because I think he's such a fiscal hawk.
Okay.
I think he does not like the idea of wasting money by bringing the legislature back to town.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
this is one of those things that's really important to him, is my sense. And I would be very surprised if he didn't look at it and say, well, if you guys weren't able to do this, I'm going to keep bringing you back until you do. And that, by the way, it's a very good leverage tool to get people to do things. You've been listening to the Sit Down with Russ Latino. We've had a good program. Thank you for bearing with me as my voice goes out towards the end of this program. The Sit Down is a production of Mississippi Public Broadcasting, Think Radio, funded by generous contributions from listeners like you. Today's show was produced by the effervescent Jermaine Flood, with live stream production by Abram Nanny. And anybody else?
Oh, that's us.
That's it.
Oh, Joseph Hall.
Joseph Hall's back there. Let's not give credit to Joseph. We'll be back next week. Stay tuned for Southern Remedy right here on MPB Think Radio.